Taoiseach, Minister Madigan, Provost, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, collaborators, future collaborators. It's a tremendous privilege to address you today in this historic place, Dublin Castle, where power and bureaucracy combined to shape the Irish story across many centuries. I hold in my hand a book published exactly 100 years ago this year. I've amazingly never held the original copy before. It was lent to me half an hour ago by the Honourable Society of King's Inns, and I'm grateful to them. And its title is A Guide to the Records Deposited in the Public Record Office of Ireland by the then Archivist-in-Chief, Mr. Herbert Woods. And it has been dubbed in the past the most depressing book in Irish history. Because 3 years after it was published in 1919, the records it describes in heartbreaking detail were consumed by the flames of 1922. But for that brief spell of 3 years, from publication to conflagration, Herbert Woods' Guide of 1919 revealed to anyone who cared to look the wealth of the documentary heritage held in the record treasury. And truly, it was a record treasury down at the Four Courts. Herbert Wood himself, the author, referred to his magnificent archive as the great untilled field of Irish history. You have to imagine the records being collected for the first time together and being accessible. They told a continuous archival story stretching back 7 centuries and reaching every corner of the island and the world beyond. He and his predecessors took every measure to prevent the outbreak of fire, including, we know from correspondence in 1874, they requested a new water supply to the basement, along with 2 fire extinguishers and 6 buckets, which they said, under proper management, quote, would be a sufficient safeguard against fire. Well, 6 buckets and 2 fire extinguishers were not sufficient when the Four Courts became the cockpit of struggle in 1922. In that year, as we know, the Record Treasury acquired new occupants. It acquired a new unofficial name. It serves as a munitions block where grenades and explosives are built. And on the 30th of June, the 3rd day of the bombardment and the opening engagement of the Civil War, explosions and fire gutted the Treasury, causing those great ironwork galleries which held the records 6 stories high to melt and cast the parchment and paper into the furnace below. So how do we mark that centenary? And an even bigger question, moving from memory to history, how does any society recover from a cultural erasure of that kind and write its story? I count myself incredibly lucky to be working at a time when we have answers, new answers to those questions, and on a scale that was unimaginable even 10 years ago. In its centenary year, Herbert Woods is no longer a document of loss. It is instead a book of possibility, an enabling guide to the riches of the record treasury, and a way to link an astounding array of replacement archives worldwide, which we've identified with our collaborations since the Irish Research Council first awarded this project funding in 2016. It's tragic that one person who cannot share this very special moment is the project's co-founder, my friend Shay Lawless. Shay and I, together with my colleague from history, Dr. Kieran Wallace, the deputy director of the project, worked together almost daily for 3 years. And Shay had, as the Provost and Taoiseach have mentioned, a sort of magical ability to work and translate across the disciplines and convey always a sense of boundless possibility. It was Shay who understood how to take the notion of a virtual record treasury and make it a reality by combining deep history and archival knowledge with big data, artificial intelligence, and virtual and augmented reality. To Pam and Emma and baby Shay and Shay's parents, Jimmy and Betty, and the wider family, as the Provost and the Taoiseach have said, this is Shay's academic legacy. Shay's vision is shared now, not just with our own remarkable research team. I want to acknowledge Dr. David Brown and Dr. Gary Munnelly in particular, who've been working with us, as well as the wider group in ADAPT. His vision is shared not just with us, but now it's a vision federated amongst our 5 core partners and over 30 archives and libraries, including several of the most famous memory institutions in the world. And this is just a beginning. The name Beyond 2022 directs our attention, yes, to the centenary of the fire, but then also to the beyond, to a growing resource and a deepening engagement with far-flung archives, spearheaded by frontier research at that interface of technology and culture. On my own behalf, and speaking for everyone involved in Beyond 2022, including our closest collaborators and partner at the National Archives of Ireland, I wish to thank the Taoiseach and Minister Madigan, as well as their officials and the expert advisory group on centenary commemorations for their engagement and support and confidence, leading to this moment when Ireland's virtual record treasury can be described as a national legacy project for the decade of centenaries. Now the work starts in earnest. We have, by my count, 940 days, including weekends. But we are very proud to be able to share with you now our collective vision for where we will take this legacy project by the centenary of that terrible fire in 2022. Thank you very much.